The faculty meeting at Lincoln High School went dead silent when Principal Davis announced their guest speaker's name. Marcus Thompson, he said. Some of you might remember him. The teachers who remembered him were stunned, not because he was successful, but because the last time they'd seen him, they'd voted unanimously to expel him permanently. The conference room at Lincoln High School buzzed with the usual pre-graduation planning energy. Teachers sorted through student lists, discussed ceremony logistics, and debated speaking arrangements with the familiar efficiency of educators who had managed dozens of graduations. Principal Robert Davis, now in his 23rd year at Lincoln High, called for attention as he prepared to announce their keynote speaker for the upcoming ceremony. "I've confirmed our graduation speaker," Davis said, consulting his notes. "Brigadier General Marcus Thompson from Fort Bragg will be delivering the commencement address." The room continued its low hum of conversation until Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, the mathematics department head who had been at Lincoln for 28 years, looked up sharply from her paperwork. "Did you say Marcus Thompson?" she asked, her voice carrying a tone that made other teachers pause their conversations. "Yes, that's right. Brigadier General Marcus Thompson." "Why? Do you know him?" Mrs. Rodriguez set down her pen and stared at Principal Davis with an expression that mixed disbelief with something approaching shock. "Bob, Marcus Thompson was one of my students. About 20 years ago." The casual atmosphere in the room shifted as other veteran teachers began to process the name. Ms. Patricia Williams, the English department coordinator, looked confused. "Marcus Thompson. That name sounds familiar, but I can't place him." "You should remember him," said Mr. James Foster, the school counselor who had been at Lincoln for over 30 years. "Marcus Thompson. Class of—" He paused, calculating. Well, he never actually graduated, but he would have been class of 2004. The silence that followed was immediate and complete. Every teacher in the room who had been at Lincoln High School in the early 2000s suddenly understood why Mrs. Rodriguez looked like she'd seen a ghost. Marcus Thompson hadn't just been a student at Lincoln High School. He had been the student, the one whose name appeared on incident reports more often than attendance sheets, whose behavior had challenged every teacher brave enough to work with him, and whose eventual departure from the school had been met with a collective sigh of relief from faculty and administration alike. "That can't be the same Marcus Thompson," Ms. Williams said slowly. "Our Marcus Thompson didn't. I mean, he was a general?" Mrs. Rodriguez finished. "Yeah, I'm having trouble believing it too." Principal Davis, who had arrived at Lincoln High 5 years after Marcus's departure, looked around the room at his veteran teachers with growing curiosity. "I take it this student made an impression." "That's one way to put it," Mr. Foster said grimly. "Marcus Thompson was the reason we implemented half the—" Marcus had been 17 when he'd last walked the halls of Lincoln High, but he'd carried himself with the aggressive swagger of someone much older and considerably more dangerous. At 6 feet 2 inches and already filled out with the kind of muscle that came from street fights rather than organized sports, Marcus had intimidated students and teachers alike with his presence, his temper, and his complete disregard for authority. His academic record had been a disaster from freshman year onward. Despite obvious intelligence, teachers noted that he was capable of brilliant insights when he chose to engage. Marcus's grades reflected a pattern of missed assignments, skipped classes, and confrontational behavior that had made learning impossible for him and everyone around him. He was smart, Mrs. Rodriguez remembered, smarter than most of my honor students. But he was so angry about everything that he couldn't channel that intelligence into anything productive. The anger had manifested in increasingly serious disciplinary issues. Marcus had been suspended for fighting more times than anyone could count, had been caught dealing drugs on school property, and had developed a reputation for intimidating both students and teachers who tried to hold him accountable for his behavior. "I try to work with him," admitted Ms. Williams. "I saw potential in his writing when he bothered to write anything. But he made it clear that he didn't want help, didn't trust authority figures, and wasn't interested in changing." The final incident had occurred during Marcus's junior year. A confrontation with the faculty vote was unanimous, Mr. Foster recalled. "We tried everything, counseling, alternative programs, behavioral contracts. Nothing worked. Marcus had made it clear that he didn't want to be helped, and frankly, we couldn't risk the safety of other students. At 17, Marcus Thompson had left Lincoln High School with no diploma, a criminal record, and a reputation that had followed him throughout the community. Most of his teachers had assumed he'd become a statistic, another young man whose potential had been destroyed by circumstances, poor choices, and an inability to find direction before it was too late. I remember thinking, Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly, that Marcus was going to end up dead or in prison within 5 years. I hate admitting that, but at the time, it seemed inevitable. Principal Davis listened to these stories with growing amazement. The Marcus Thompson his teachers were describing bore no resemblance to the accomplished military officer who had corresponded with him about the graduation ceremony. Are we absolutely sure we're talking about the same person? Davis asked. The question was answered when Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out her phone and searched for Brigadier General Marcus Thompson. The first result was an official Department of Defense biography, complete with a photograph that showed a distinguished-looking African-American officer in dress uniform, his chest decorated with ribbons and medals that spoke of years of distinguished service. But that's definitely Marcus Thompson. As the biography was passed around the room, the teachers learned details about Marcus's military career that seemed to describe a completely different person from the troubled teenager they remembered. According to the official record, Marcus Thompson had enlisted in the Army immediately after leaving high school and had served with distinction for over 20 years. He had completed multiple combat deployments, earned a bachelor's degree through military education programs, graduated from the Army War College, and risen through the ranks to become one of the youngest general officers in his branch. His decorations included the Bronze Star Medal, the Purple Heart, and the Distinguished Service Medal. He had commanded units ranging from company to brigade level, had served in staff positions at the Pentagon, and was currently responsible for training operations at one of the Army's largest installations. "This is incredible," Ms. Williams said, reading through the biography. Marcus Thompson, our Marcus Thompson, is a general. Not just any general, Principal Davis added, reading over her shoulder. According to this, he's being considered for promotion to Major General. And look at this. He has a master's degree in organizational leadership and is working on a doctorate in educational administration. The transformation from troubled dropout to distinguished general officer seemed so improbable that several teachers wondered if there had been. But as they continued to research, they found additional confirmation. Newspaper articles about Marcus's community service projects, interviews where he discussed his commitment to helping at-risk youth, and photographs from military ceremonies where his achievements were being recognized by senior leadership. "I don't understand," said Ms. Williams. "How does someone go from being expelled from high school to becoming a general? That kind of transformation, it doesn't just happen." Principal Davis was already thinking about the implications for his current students. "Actually, I think that's exactly why we need him to speak at graduation. If Marcus Thompson can transform his life that completely, maybe our struggling students need to hear how he did it." The research that followed revealed additional details about Marcus's post-high school journey. Military records, while limited in what they disclosed publicly, suggested that Marcus's transformation had begun immediately upon enlisting. His performance in basic training had been exceptional, earning him recognition as an honor graduate and setting the stage for rapid advancement through the enlisted ranks. More importantly, interviews with Marcus in military publications revealed that his success hadn't been accidental or easy. He had deliberately sought out the structure, discipline, and purpose that the military provided, using his service as a platform for personal growth and education. "I needed the military more than the military needed me," Marcus had said in one interview. "I was a kid with a lot of anger and no direction." 3 weeks later, on a warm May morning, Brigadier General Marcus Thompson walked through the front doors of Lincoln High School for the first time in 20 years. He wore his dress blue uniform with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned every ribbon and medal displayed on his chest, but his demeanor was humble and approachable rather than intimidating. The teachers who had gathered in the main office to meet him struggled to reconcile their memories of the angry, troubled teenager with a poised, articulate officer standing before them. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Marcus said, extending his hand to his former mathematics teacher with a smile that showed genuine warmth and respect. I remember you trying to teach me algebra. I wasn't a very good student back then. Mrs. Rodriguez shook his hand with an expression that mixed amazement with something approaching awe. Marcus, I can't believe this is you. You look different, Marcus suggested with a slight smile. I hope so. I wasn't exactly headed in a good direction when I left here. Ms. Williams approached next, clearly struggling with emotions as she looked at the man who had once been one of her most challenging students. Marcus, I need to apologize. I gave up on you. We all did. I'm sorry. Marcus shook his head gently. Ms. Williams, you didn't give up on me. You tried to help a kid who wasn't ready to be helped. There's a difference. I had to figure out how to help myself before anyone else could make a difference. The conversation that followed, as Marcus met with the teachers who remembered him, was both emotional and enlightening. Marcus spoke openly about his troubled teenage years, acknowledging the problems he had caused while also explaining the circumstances and mindset that had led to his destructive behavior. I was angry about everything, he explained to the assembled faculty. My father had left when I was 12. My mother was working 3 jobs just to keep us housed and fed, and I felt like the world was against me. School felt irrelevant to my problems, and I took that frustration out on anyone who tried to tell me what to do. He paused, looking around the room at teachers who had tried to reach him during those difficult years. What I understand now, that I couldn't understand then, is that you were trying to help me find a path forward. But I was too angry and too scared to see it. It took joining the military for me to realize that structure and discipline weren't punishment. They were tools that could help me build the life I wanted. Principal Davis leaned forward with interest. What was it about the military that made the difference? What happened that couldn't have happened here? Marcus considered the question carefully. A few things. First, the military made it clear from day one that my past didn't matter. What mattered was what I did from that moment forward. Second, they gave me responsibility and showed me that my actions affected other people in very real ways. And third, they surrounded me with people who had successfully made similar transformations. He gestured toward his uniform and decorations. But most importantly, they helped me understand that leadership isn't about being the toughest or the most intimidating person in the room. Real leadership is about serving others, making good decisions under pressure, and taking responsibility for outcomes, both good and bad. As graduation day approached, word spread throughout the school district about their keynote speaker's connection to Lincoln High. Current students who were struggling academically or behaviorally began to take notice of the fact that someone who had once been in their position had achieved extraordinary success. Tyler Jenkins, a 16-year-old junior with a disciplinary record that echoed Marcus's teenage years, had been particularly intrigued by the story. Like Marcus, Tyler was intelligent but angry, capable but unmotivated, and headed toward academic failure despite obvious potential. I want to meet him, Tyler told his counselor. I want to ask him how he did it. The conversation between Tyler and Marcus, arranged by school administrators the day before graduation, proved to be as transformative for the current student as it was meaningful for the general. You remind me of myself at your age, Marcus told Tyler as they sat in the same office where Marcus had once been disciplined for his behavioral problems. Smart, angry, convinced that the system is against you and that nothing you do in school matters for your real life. Tyler nodded, surprised by how accurately Marcus had described his mindset. The thing is, Marcus continued, you're not entirely wrong. The system can be unfair, and some of what you're learning in school might not seem directly relevant to your daily challenges. But what you're missing, what I missed when I was sitting in this same chair, is that school isn't just about the subjects you're studying. It's about learning how to learn, how to solve problems, how to work with people you don't necessarily like, and how to complete tasks even when you don't want to do them. Marcus leaned forward, speaking with the authority of someone who had learned these lessons the hard way. Tyler, I wasted my high school years because I thought success meant being tough enough to intimidate people. What I learned in the military is that real success means being disciplined enough to do difficult things, smart enough to keep learning throughout your life, and strong enough to help other people succeed too. The graduation ceremony held that Saturday was unlike any in Lincoln High's history. When Principal Davis introduced Brigadier General Marcus Thompson, the auditorium fell silent as students and parents processed the story of the local dropout who had become a general. Marcus's speech was personal, honest, and challenging. He spoke about his failures at Lincoln High, acknowledging the teachers who had tried to help him and apologizing for the disruption he had caused. But he also spoke about the lessons he had learned through military service and the opportunities that education, both formal and informal, had provided throughout his career. "I stand before you not as someone who had it all figured out," Marcus told the graduating seniors, "but as someone who learned that it's never too late to change direction, never too late to start taking responsibility for your choices, and never too late to become the person you're capable of being." He looked directly at the section where he knew Tyler Jenkins was sitting with other underclassmen who had been invited to attend. To the students who are struggling, who feel like they don't fit in, or who think that success isn't possible for someone with their background, I want you to know that transformation is possible. Not easy, but possible. And it starts with making a decision to become the person you want to be, rather than the person your circumstances seem to be creating. The standing ovation that followed Marcus's speech lasted over 5 minutes. But perhaps more importantly, it marked the beginning of changes at Lincoln High that would benefit students for years to come. Inspired by Marcus's story and his ongoing willingness to mentor struggling students, the school district implemented a program called Second Chances that paired at-risk students with military veterans who had overcome similar challenges. Marcus became the program's honorary chairman and returned to Lincoln High quarterly to speak with students and provide mentorship. Tyler Jenkins, the student who had reminded Marcus of his younger self, became one of the program's first success stories. With Marcus's mentorship and the structured support provided by the Second Chances program, Tyler completed high school with a 3.4 GPA and earned a partial scholarship to attend college. "General Thompson showed me that my past doesn't have to determine my future," Tyler said during his own graduation speech 2 years later. "He taught me that success isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to learn from your mistakes and work every day to become better than you were yesterday." 5 years after his return to Lincoln High, Marcus Thompson was promoted to Major General and assigned to command a major Army installation. But he continued his relationship with his alma mater, establishing a scholarship fund for students who had overcome significant personal challenges and maintaining his role in the Second Chances mentoring program. The program had expanded beyond Lincoln High to serve the entire school district, and its success had attracted national attention from educators working with at-risk youth. Marcus's story had become a case study in the power of Mrs. Rodriguez, now approaching retirement, often thought about the lesson Marcus's transformation had taught her about the unpredictability of human potential. "If someone had told me 20 years ago that Marcus Thompson would become a general, I would have thought they were delusional," she admitted during an interview about the program's success. "But Marcus taught me that our job as educators isn't to predict who will succeed. It's to plant seeds of possibility and trust that sometimes, even when it takes years, those seeds will find a way to grow." Marcus Thompson's journey from expelled dropout to general officer became more than just a personal success story. It became a reminder that transformation is possible for anyone willing to do the difficult work of changing their life. His relationship with Lincoln High evolved from a source of mutual frustration to a partnership that helped dozens of struggling students find their own paths to success. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus's story challenged the assumptions that educators, students, and communities often make about what kinds of people can achieve extraordinary things. His success demonstrated that leadership, achievement, and service aren't reserved for people who follow traditional paths or who never make serious mistakes. "I'm not successful because I was perfect," Marcus often told the students he mentored. "I'm successful because I learned to be disciplined, because I found people who believed in my potential even when I didn't, and because I discovered that serving others is the most fulfilling way to spend your life." And every time he walked through the halls of Lincoln High School, now wearing stars on his shoulders rather than defiance in his posture, Marcus Thompson served as living proof that with the right combination of structure, support, and personal commitment, anyone can rewrite their story. The teachers who had once voted unanimously to expel him, now pointed to his example when working with their most challenging students, understanding that sometimes the young people who seem most lost are simply waiting for someone to show them how to find their way. Because that's what Marcus Thompson learned and what he taught others. That success isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to let your starting point determine where you finish. And sometimes the most powerful transformations come from the people everyone least expects to succeed.